if you have to do something more than 5 times, so 6 and up, you should consider looking into PowerShell. Sometimes it can be a little scary if you're not familiar with PowerShell because you see codes and commands and it might be uh, almost abstract. But it turns out that when you take a bit of time to look into it, it's very logical and it can be easy to learn and apply to build a script. We even have examples of scripts within different help articles that show you how to build your own. And when you are done, if it works, that's wonderful. If you have some additional questions or you get into errors or unexpected behaviors, you could always submit a support ticket and send a copy of your script to the support team so they can let you know, oh, this is actually incorrect or this parameter doesn't work that way. You should kind of reverse think, and will guide you in making sure that your script is optimized and works as intended. Now, PowerShell is limited to our migration module. So anything migration can be done with our PowerShell module. The only thing that is not supported will be the creation of site collections in your destination environment. So in this case, you need to make sure that these site collections have been pre-provisioned and that you are going to be merging into them. But otherwise, anything, almost anything that you can do within the UI can be done within PowerShell.
If you're doing the migration, let's say you have 5 sites to migrate and you decide to use those 5 sites, you go into ShareGate, select the 5 sites and click on migrate. Doing 5 sites in one operation actually generates more throttling than if you would do 5 one after the other. The reason for that is that when you start 5 sites or more sites, like multiple structural items in one migration operation, ShareGate starts all of these structural requests at the same time. And since structure is a very demanding request for a SharePoint environment, we actually noticed that doing a heavy migration operations for structural objects, so we're talking a bunch of teams together, a bunch of sites together, this actually generates an issue that can generate an issue with throttling. You would do 5 sites using PowerShell, just using a CSV and go one after the other, then you would not get as much throttling. It will look like you would expect it to be longer, but we actually notice that we usually get a speed increase from doing it this way. So that's why that the little bit of the key thing, if you have more than 5 sites to do, be it either the 5 same operation, or if you have like 5 sites, more than 5 teams, and you would select all of them to do one operation, breaking them down is going to help. But one thing that I want to really bring to your attention is that it's really important to understand what is the need that you want to achieve. So for instance, if you're telling me that you have 200 sites to migrate, and your key value is really integrity, security, visibility, then I would actually suggest, even if you have 200 sites, to actually just use the UI. It's a lot more user-friendly. It's super easy to find exactly what you need to do, and you have a hands-on approach, so you can be 100% certain that everything you're doing does follow your metrics and your settings that you want. If your goal is time, that's where PowerShell comes in. PowerShell is extremely efficient if the goal is really to save on time. There is a, I'm not going to say bigger, but it's going to be a different opportunity for possible human interaction or human errors. Because if you start a script and there's one setting that you didn't put right, this actually will have probably an impact on the bigger thing. So when you're going to be doing PowerShell migrations, I strongly suggest for you to start with a smaller scale, just see how it works. And once you have like if you have it in lock, you've been doing like 2 or 3 sites and everything is fine, then you can scale up as much as you want. And at that point, the sky's the limit. But the key thing is really being able to identify these situations, right? You might not even know that you would need to have PowerShell could be benefiting you. One suggestion I would have would be for you to use to run a source analysis report before you start a migration project, to really take a look at what you have in your sites. It might not seem like much. I've seen this situation lately where a user was mentioning that the migration seems slow for them, and we looked into it to discover that because they were only migrating 3 sites It was only 3 site collections. They didn't want to go PowerShell with it because it's only 3 sites. And they were running them at the same time. So all 3 in parallel. That slowed down with throttling. But we also discovered that each site collections had 250 subsites. That made things really complicated for the structure. And what they ended up doing is that they decided to do the site collection creation, make sure everything was fine, and then they used PowerShell to move each subsite one after the other. They drastically increased on speed and also on productivity, because they could actually specify this subsite is 100% done. We got the migration report, and we can carry on for their project. So, see, in this case, even though the rough numbers, so like 3 sites, didn't seem like much, being able to identify and really understand what you're migrating, what is within your project, so you can identify, like, is this a large amount of lists, libraries? Files is something else. That is a different conversation entirely. But the I would suggest always take a look at the amount of structural items, lists, libraries, subsites, sites. And if there's a lot of those, you might actually benefit, even if the scope doesn't seem big, you might be able to benefit from PowerShell.